Tom Luongo did a lot of interviews recently, and it's always fun to watch him and to listen to him. Now, it's not always so easy to understand what he's saying, to get the full picture of where he's going, but it's entertaining nevertheless, and he's a great guy. Um, and so we listen to him for that reason, but we also listen to him to get a sense of where we are and what is going on, because so many people are confused and worried about what is going on right now. And Tom is one of the foremost voices, one of the strong voices out there that give some kind of a guidance, some kind of an orientation, and some hope too of where we are and what's really happening. Now, he is, in the general scheme of things, Tom is really a fringe figure insofar as um, the he he is kind of very far out there with his explanation that Trump is fighting the city of London, which both names really are just markers for huge enterprises, if you will, and there's an epic battle going on. That's kind of his setup, and that's of course not a mainstream media topic or a perspective on things, but um, a lot of people, myself included, uh, value his contribution very much and agree with his assessments, and he's very well informed on a variety of things, including but not limited to the financial system and bond markets and on all these kind of things, which are um, somewhat overwhelming to normal people because we don't know what it is in detail, how it works. There's always the possibility that there's um, a larger explanation still hidden to us and mechanisms we are not aware of that changes the whole equation. So it's fun to listen to Tom Luongo on his epic explanations on these things, but it's difficult to follow and it's difficult to assess whether what he's telling us is actually the truth. But there's more, and that more is something um, that needs some contemplation here, because he's explaining the world as in a state of war, where there is an explicit war going on, and that's not a metaphorical situation. That's actually including fighting on many theaters, war between Trump and his administration and military support on the one side, and the City of London and all its many tentacles and the many um, incarnations this beast has. On the other hand, including intelligence services and so many else. So, and if there's a war, that's not a single person enterprise. There are rules to that engagement, even if it's very unconventional and very hidden to the normal people at this point in time. There are rules and regulations how wars are being fought, and we know that because we know the law of war manual that the Department of Defense, now the Department of War, apparently, published in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. 2017 is a revised edition, the one most people downloaded at some point in time. And that's a 1,000 page book with so many details on as a manual for US military personnel, um, how to engage in wars, which rules to follow, really, because military apparatus is nothing but a tremendous bureaucracy with guns, but still, and in such a bureaucracy, Personal accountability matters, and lawyers do have a lot of say. So it's not true that a war can be fought um, just on the whim of the president. There are commands that are being followed need to be in a certain line of legality. That goes, for instance, for the bombing of boats in international waters, which Tom Luongo pointed out. There are reasons why that is legally totally fine, whatever your moral point of view may be. And I'm kind of the opinion that we don't know the background story really. So having an opinion on what's happening there is always difficult. We can just observe what we are being shown and try to not lose our head in the theater. But what I'm missing most in Tom Luongo's presentation is kind of the overarching framework in what is happening here. And he gives a lot of detail, and his method really is to go to as many details as he can and synthesize those into a bigger picture. But the picture is, frankly speaking, not big enough for my liking, because um, I do listen to him, and he's great and entertaining. But after after the 1.5 hours or whatever the run may be, the current video may be, uh, you end up in a state of puzzlement because there are so many things that happen, so many things were mentioned and discussed and never fully explained, and then eventually, like, okay, now what is it? Where are we? What's really going on? I believe there's a framework, a mental framework that makes a lot of sense and that explains a lot and helps to sort things into categories and get some clarity. And that's, of course, the WAR framework as Tom Luongo presents. However, the war is much older, much further advanced than typically acknowledged. Take, for instance, the whole sulfur story. And Tom Luongo tells this story repeatedly that the US spun up sulfur as the alternative to LIBOR and then switched over and now is decoupled from the London markets and London banks and can maintain the dollar on its own for its own people in the right way, which sounds absolutely great and required. And I'm not the. I do believe he's spot on this detail and say, well, that had to happen and this was very much needed. However, it happened very much in Trump's first term. So Trump won, the one that was elected 2016, got into power in January 2017. Um, this administration prepared so many things, so far included, that are crucial in the war right now that we cannot assume that Trump's first administration didn't know what they were up to and where they were going. It's absolutely obvious once you think about it that Trump, who was elected in the very beginning with a presentation of with the promise to drain the swamp, this guy knew what he was getting into from the very start, and he knew where they want to go with all of this and what kind of creatures they wanted to eradicate, and they were working on it from the very first day. However, it wasn't an obvious war at the point in time yet. It was a preparation of sorts. And now, looking back, um, he got a he got killed in the press back then. So someone knew that he wasn't up to like didn't follow the original plan, but he was derailing whatever they originally laid out. And that's the key. There was an original plan. And the original plan really was for Obama to softening up the US, and as he did, like he created tons and tons of problems. And for Hillary then to finish off the job and essentially bury the US and kill it off once and for all. This would have caused tremendous damage, including, but not limited to, a stock market crash in 2022. Like October 2022 would have been the date where they like pulled the plug and everything would come crashing down. They knew what the market world was and how the financial system was set up. Greenspan told us years ago that the pension system wasn't sustainable and all these kind of things. They were running into a dead end and they planned to really destroy the system. And it's important to understand there was a plan beforehand. And the goal of the plan beforehand was to actually finish, kill, and bury the US. This land was meant to vanish from the earth. The reason for that really is 1776, which Trump, of course, had a commission set up to remind people that this year existed and that in this year something remarkable happened. The remarkable point being that a couple of British gentlemen, English gentlemen, decided they didn't need no king. There was only God above them. They were free men in a free land. And this couldn't stand for those people that tried and still try to own the world, rule the world. They couldn't have a whole country over there where people didn't recognize authority they didn't have on their payroll, you see. So this was not, the conflict here at the core is a religious conflict, not an economic conflict. There isn't some evil dude who tries to make more money than the other guy or something like that. At the base of it is that the American people had the audacity to walk away and reject the king and give themselves a constitution that says we are free men. And we all know that there are like a lot of asterisks and a lot of history to all of that, but this couldn't stand. And the original plan here, the plan that Obama followed and that Hillary would have taken up on, would have been to destroy all of that and make it abundantly clear to all future generations that you should never try that again because you're getting punished. So that plan existed, and that plan had a lot of different gears set in motion. Many components were there because you don't just destroy the world, you plan for the new setup afterwards at the same time. And the war that Trump is fighting is the war to not let this happen and have the US be a tremendous country going forward. At the same time, reducing all these many conflicts all over the world that were part of the overall setup so that we can finally have peace in this world and prosper for that reason. And so he had to, and is in the process of detangling all kinds of nasty local problems. However, he doesn't go about and throw away the old plan and put something new in its stead in order to accomplish his goals. That would be impossible because so many people on this planet are like working and didn't get the memo that something new is going on, and you you cannot switch over. The huge difficulty in Trump's execution really is that he cannot switch the world off and on again to get it in a better state. He has to take it where it is and slowly move it over there. And it is in a state of executing a plan that had been laid out for centuries or decades at least. And that includes like all the questions on the financial market, monetary metals, Bitcoin, XRP, all the other stuff. Like, these things were in motion. So what Trump did instead was utilize the original plan, augment it, change it slightly ever so often, but still play it out going forward to a different result. And that's why we have such a confusion all the time, because we have the old stuff and the new stuff, and they are the same but different. Take XRP for instance. It's clearly been a banker's coin, or it was evil. It was set up to rule this world once the dollar was destroyed, in a way that no one was ever free again. And Bitcoin was the smoke and mirrors guy in front of it, so that you got traction, you got people used to the idea of digital currencies or whatever it may be, and misdirect them and get them away from the real thing as long as possible. Stuff like that. And Trump takes these things over and now utilizes them in a different setup to a different outcome, but still moving the world not back to how it was when it still was intact, because that state didn't exist really in human history and in living memory really. But he has to move the world forward, and he has to move the world forward on a technological path. Just distribute the gains of all of that differently. And that explains all the disconnects, and that explains why so many people changed their minds so much. Like Elon Musk is one of the prime examples, where you had a guy who was very tied into the old system and very much set up to build the cars that the central planners could organize from a central point and take away from those people that didn't have the right credit scores, or fought on the other side in the civil war and therefore were not liked by the central planners. All of that, and he switched, did it in 180, and now is the guy that prepares the technology to be distributed for the new setup. And you see the switch from him being everybody's darling and being a star in Big Bang Theory and wherever else, like being the guy being pushed as the cool entrepreneurial icon, and now he is very much hated from the kind of people that loved him before. In a couple of years, months maybe, he did this switch, and the whole reason is they exchanged the direction where this man is going, and then did a totally different, gave him a totally different persona in the process. And that's just one of many examples. This switch makes things so difficult to comprehend. And once you see that, and once you know that this whole fight, this whole struggle is years in the making already. We are in year 9 now of active Trump's involvement, which means that, by the way, those Biden years were murky because the other side, of course, had a say in the matter, but Trump never really went away. He had always his military backing and presumably has been commander in chief all this time, or at least on uh, some higher level functions. So much so that he could stop the Biden junta, the Biden show, from sending troops to Ukraine in 2022, which would have changed the whole outcome in Ukraine instantly. And that's the one thing that didn't happen, and the one thing that made all of the following events possible. Now, all that being said, I don't know how things will play out, and I'm still uh, listening to Tom Luongo for news on um, where we are in the theater, what happens now, and what's the kind of conventional explanation. And I take him to give us the conventional explanation, the explanation that will eventually be the one that sticks, and the one that we, as a society, accept as the right one. I don't believe that we necessarily get true information at this point in time on many fronts. I believe that the way wars are being fought, especially those complex wars, those hidden wars are being fought, is that we only learn about something once it's said and done, once the outcome has been accomplished. And that means that whenever there's an event like it happened in the Middle East a couple of months ago with Israel and Iran and stuff like that, the outcome's already established. All we need to do is make a show, and I'm going out on a limb here, but making a demonstration and showing to people, giving people a reason to believe that we switched the theater now, that something changed, we're in a different, after the bombings and a couple, like 2-3 weeks at max, some new state has been accomplished, and people accept that now there is no threat anymore, and the threat has been removed by these actions. I totally believe that there is no threat anymore. I just don't believe that these particular actions in those 3 weeks were what really happened. I believe that the actual war was a little more interesting, but not for the consumption of the general public, and happened quite a while ago. So this doesn't make me an expert on anything. It makes me very optimistic on the whole enterprise, because I believe, I'm very much convinced Trump already won the whole thing. You can still get hurt. There are still like a lot of things out there, and we'll still see quite some interesting events in our lifetimes. Like looking forward, it could get even tighter, depending on where you live, and I don't know what's coming along, but the majority of the wins are already in. We just didn't move the world to a better place yet, and I believe, and again, I have no factual reason to think so. I believe the reason why it's taking so long is because it's so big, it's so complicated, and these processes take time, including, not limited to, all the movement of money and precious metal and all the other things. One of the interesting notes on the precious metal side is that the British were no fools, and they knew that they had silver suppressed to ridiculous low levels, and they knew that gold would rise eventually and would have to rise, and for that reason they had the euro created with some gold backing always, and this gold backing would have taken over eventually when all the other um, all the other equities and whatever they had in their basket turned out to be a little less valuable. Gold would take a larger percentage of the overall thing. So the euro was designed to survive the final shakedown of the dollar. But the British themselves, who planned on maintaining their global leadership, had Indians the Indian silver in their vaults, and meant to re-evaluate that eventually to astronomical heights, such that they have all the money after everything is said and done. So they knew what was coming, they were prepared, and what Trump did was to slow it down, derail the failure of the U.S., the total destruction of the U.S., and in the process drain the city of London, or drain their vaults of gold and silver. And now the reevaluation is right here. It started and will continue probably a couple of years. But the British cannot participate anymore because they don't have this stuff. They planned on having the majority of it, and now it's not there anymore. And that's actually pretty good. I'm irrationally optimistic on this is actually really, really good, but it takes so much time. So I'm going to continue to watch Tom Luongo, and I'm waiting for him to explain more details of what he sees and what's happening. And I'm always watching it as, okay, what's public now? Where are we? What phase of the overall process has been finished now, so that we, as the general public, can learn about it? Because what the military leadership is really working on, what's really the hot topic of the day, that's not televised. That's not accessible to us. They will